What is a Hellstrip? Well, it's kind of the space between the sidewalk and the street. And usually it's very narrow. It is considered a public space, so anybody can walk on it. Animals can go on it. People can drive up over the curb. So it is kind of a harsh environment for plants to grow in. So that's kind of how it got its name. It's a kind of a hard, harsh place for plants to grow. So here you can kind of see a couple of different pictures. Here, this is on a shaded street, and then this one is all the way out. It's very sunny, hot, and dry. So the conditions on the Hellstrips can be highly variable as well. So some things to consider. This tree that you see here, you can see that the sidewalk has been moved over time. They've tried to maybe open up a little bit of the soil availability or water availability to the tree and tried to kind of manage that a little bit. But what are the local ordinances that you need to be aware of? Some places you have to have lawn. It doesn't matter, or turf down. It doesn't matter whether you want to do wildflowers or not. There could be utilities underneath these Hellstrips. Like I said earlier, you need to remember that these are public spaces. So you may have cat urine and poo. You may have dog urine and poo. All of those things can happen, as well as salt that might get onto them in the wintertime and increase the salinity of your soil. You could get reflective heat from the concrete that's around it. So you've got to remember this is kind of a unique place to garden. The main thing to remember, again, is the right plant in the right spot. So you need to do a good evaluation of your Hellstrip. What kind of soil is there? How compacted is it? How much sunlight does it get? What about runoff on water? Is it something that you're going to have to maintain with irrigation? There's just a lot of things that you have to take into consideration when you're thinking about maybe developing that into a native garden. Not that it hasn't been done. In this little space that you see in the picture, they've planted a small hosta kind of along the edges of it, and they seem to be thriving pretty well. Now, the other thing to consider, the question mentioned also that it was specifically under a birch tree. So the type of tree that you're planting under may affect what plants will grow there as well. So in this picture, this is an older but small oak tree. And then we also have red buds that are going along the street as well. A birch tree, they put out a lot of feeder roots and kind of form a mat on the very top of the soil. So they are going to try to take that water first from any plants that you try to plant around it. So just kind of keep that in mind. You may have to supplement with more water if you're wanting the plants to grow well there. So what are some things that you can do? Well, it's best to plant with seeds or small plugs. And that's because of all those feeder roots that I mentioned. And those feeder roots really extend all the way out to the end of the drip line. So wherever the canopy is, you're going to have roots underneath that as well. So if you dig big holes, you could damage some of those roots, which could then damage your tree. You see here in this picture some violets that they're just allowing to kind of grow with that. And that really could be a good choice for you because they have relatively shallow roots and they kind of fill in nicely and they don't outcompete some of the other plants. But like I said, try to plant with seeds if you can, or very small plugs so that you do not disturb those feeder roots. Plants to consider, well, plants that are naturally short and sturdy. You don't want things that are flopping over into the sidewalk because people will walk on them. You may have to, have in your mind that you may have to fence it up a little bit or stake the plants. Some of the ones that might work well, like the violets that I mentioned earlier, a lot of people have had good luck with rudbeckias. And that's what you see here in this picture from a landscaping company. Columbine might do well, depending on your conditions, but I've seen it right up next to tree roots in the wild, so it may be a plant that could do well. Virginia bluebells, this is an ephemeral plant. That means it comes on early in the spring and then it just disappears. So you don't want to just put Virginia bluebells. You'll need to plant it with something else, but that might be something that you could plant underneath your tree. There are a couple of varieties of pussy toes, Antonaria. One of them is called Antonaria neglecta. And that is one that may do really well under your tree. I have some wild geraniums and coral bells that are planted together underneath a redbud tree, but this is in a yard. It's not necessarily in a Hellstrip that do really well. And you might also want to consider maybe just some other grasses, low growing grasses that tolerate drought, maybe buffalo grass, or perhaps some of the sedges might do well as well. Some resources that you could check out. Grownative.org has a great database. You can kind of sort the plants by the amount of sunlight, the type of soil, the amount of water, and you can maybe choose some plants from there. And then I watched a video recording from the Native Prairie Foundation called Soft Landings. And that doesn't necessarily talk about Hellstrips, but it does talk about planting under trees. So you might be able to get some good pointers from that video. And that's a video that is available to the public. So that's kind of my ideas on growing native plants and Hellstrips. Just kind of know that you may have your work cut out for you. It may not be just as simple as plugging plants in and they take off.